about the bits. Now remember we said 96 bits, you could number all the grains of sand. Okay? With 23 bits, you could number every automobile on the planet. With 29 bits, you could number every computer on the planet. And look at the third one there. With only 33 bits, you could number all the humans on the planet. And then it goes on, razor blades and grains of rice. Notice grains of rice is only 54 bits, and they're talking about 96 or 128 bits with this technology ultimately. So they'll clearly be able to number lots of things. We found it interesting that humans were listed among the things that they may want to consider numbering. You may have heard of something called the VeriChip. The VeriChip is produced by a company called Applied Digital Solutions out of Florida. They also have a technology called the Digital Angel, which you may also have heard of. The VeriChip is essentially an RFID chip. The very device I'm talking about can be queried from a distance. You beam electromagnetic energy at it. It beams back its identifying number. You can use it to identify people and track people at a distance anytime they pass within the read range of a reader device. Right? These devices are meant to be implanted into human flesh, so they actually inject it. I believe right now it's the inner, upper, inside of your arm where they literally inject these devices into people. Now, the idea for the VeriChip is that this chip not only contains a unique identifying number, but it can also contain additional information. I believe their stated application is to put things like your drug allergies or medical conditions you might have, so that if you go into a coma or have a problem, someone would scan that device and be able to tell information about you. Human-computer ID chip proposed. This has been pretty extensively covered in the media. The reason I want to show you this image is because it shows the little tiny thing up close. The little tiny thing is slightly more sophisticated than the one that you would stick onto a package of razor blades because it's got to actually survive inside the human body. It's encased in glass. It contains a tiny chip and a memory device and then lots of coiled wire that serves as the antenna. That's what it looks like. Oops. And my final statement would be that this technology is here, but we've got a couple things on our side. People don't like it. They really don't like it. They really, really don't like it. People all over the world have been interviewed and queried about this technology, and almost without exception, they say, heck no, we don't want it. It is not a popular technology. There are very few benefits, if any, for consumers with this technology, and believe me, they are scrambling like crazy to try to find them, but they're having a hard time. All of the benefits in this technology are on the side of the manufacturers, the side of the marketers, the side of the person who wants to run the Coors ad through your refrigerator by keeping track of what's in your house. Or the, the drug companies would like to put these devices in your medicine cabinet so they can monitor your compliance with your prescription. And when you read that, you think, well, yeah, that's kind of nice of them, maybe, to make sure I'm taking my prescription right. Their stated reason is, at least internally, they will admit their reason is, if they could monitor it, they could probably get you to take your drugs more often, and then they'd make more money because you would be refilling your prescription more frequently. So even putting these reader devices in medicine cabinets, and in fact, I sat in a conference once with a bunch of medical people who were talking about this technology, and one of them actually said, wouldn't it be great if we could tell every time someone takes the lid off the toothpaste? Yeah, great. Consumers don't like it. I didn't see a single smile when I said that in the room. People don't like the idea of other people watching what they're doing and knowing what they're wearing and knowing what they're carrying. I think the privacy implications, the crime implications, and the long-term societal implications are pretty obvious. And now let me give you the scare story. Think if in the 1930s Hitler had had access to this technology. What would have been different? What would have been done differently? The technology that we have even now, let's say that you had Anne Frank living in your attic. And let's say that you knew that your purchases were being monitored with your credit card or your loyalty card. And you knew better than to buy more than usual to feed Anne Frank. And you made a decision that you and your family members would just eat a little bit less to provide for her. So you'd cook a normal amount of breakfast and you'd maybe cut off some of the eggs and put them on a plate and somebody would carry them up to Anne. They'd never know, right? Well, do you know that AC Nielsen and Catalina Marketing and all of the companies that keep track of what people buy have got this down to such a sophisticated science that one of these companies boasts it can tell if there's more people in your household than you're claiming or than you're buying for at that one store. You know how they can tell? By how much toilet tissue you buy. So unless you're sharing toilet tissue and being careful that Anne Frank only gets the little extra bit of leftover toilet tissue, they're going to know. Now, take that and multiply it by about 10,000, which is about how many things we interact with in the course of a normal week. And if all of those things were trackable and registered and followable and monitorable, if that's even a word, then the possibility for abuse is really extraordinary. Now, history has shown us many times, and I know people always say it can't happen here, but history has shown us time and time again, particularly in the 20th century when 169 million people were killed by their own governments. Those are not casualties of war. Those are not soldiers. Those are people actually brutally murdered by their own governments. Right? We have a history of power being horrifically abused on this planet. This is power beyond your wildest imagining. Right now, maybe you're thinking about marketers knowing who you are when you walk in the door. Imagine someone like Stalin or Pol Pot knowing who you were when you walked in the door, knowing who you'd spent your time with, knowing who else walked through the door with you, knowing whose fountain pen you're carrying with you. Imagine the implications of having you and your network of associates tracked, followed, and known about at all times. It would make people very compliant. It would make them very obedient citizens. But what has stopped that kind of abuse in the past is good people who've stood up and said, you know what, we don't want to live like this. We don't want to have a dictator who's going to be evil and abusive and murderous. And good people have gotten together and have overthrown those type of governments. If we got this kind of technology in place, and if it was obtained and all of that power fell into the hands of someone evil who wanted to abuse it, all of the things that have kept humanity safe from those type of abuses in the past would no longer work. You would not be able to get together as the folks did in the tavern back in Concord and Lexington back in the days of the American Revolution. You would not be able to get together in a tavern and have those conversations if EnviroCell had planted hidden microphones and cameras in there, and if there were embedded RFID readers in the seats. And by the way, that's one of the other places they've been putting those, is in furniture. They can actually put them in the seat and know who's sitting there. Now, I usually, when I conclude this talk, I say shop safe, everybody. And I'd like to, first of all, say definitely shop safe. But I'd like you to think safe. And when I say think safe, I want you to think about what it means to be surveilled. It may create some degree of safety, but I'd like to talk to you about safety for just a second. The most surveilled people on this planet, arguably, were the citizens of Stalin's Soviet Union. Those citizens ran the risk of their every piece of mail being opened, their every telephone conversation being listened in on, their every neighbor being a spy for the KGB. Were they safe? Tens of millions of people perished in that country, murdered by Stalin because they opposed what he stood for. So when you think safety, I want you to think about the tens of millions of people killed in the Soviet Union because of too much surveillance and power in the wrong hands. Safety is a little bit less about maybe running the risk of some creep down the street mugging you, and maybe a little bit more about tens of millions of people being killed by a government out of control. And that being said, I will say, shop safe, everybody, and think about the choices that you make. Thank you.